1994 was a special year for the NFL. The 75th anniversary season had all sorts of action and colorful uniforms too. It was one of the most significant years in NFL history. And it was also a great time for football video games. Now, I know people these days are excited about the latest version of NCAA football that's going to come out soon. I'll be honest, I'm actually tempted to get a PS5 just to play it. But you know, what we see in terms of hype today is nothing like how things were back in the mid-1990s. You can't go through mid-1990s video game magazines without being overwhelmed by tons of football game ads. Some of these games look incredible on paper, though most of them have been forgotten. And some of these games were better than others, that's for sure. But one of these games stands out to me above all the rest. So there's a story behind this. You see, I was in a half-price books up in Bellevue, Washington, sometime around the summer of 1999 or 2000. We were visiting my grandparents. I was in high school at the time, and we went to the bookstore to look around just for an afternoon. And I ran into a copy of Front Page Sports Football Pro 95. I think it cost me about $5 or so. I was really fascinated by the cover art. Now, this is back in the days of big box PC games, and honestly, the big box was more interesting to me than even the game itself. I don't think in the game I ever got any further than the tutorials, but I've always wanted to go back and experience it again. Now, the hype for this game was huge, especially in computer gaming world. It's confusing though. This November 1994 issue claims that the game was still in development. However, it seems that the game was already released. So this ad is from the Boston Globe, November 20th, 1994. And here's an ad from a newspaper up in Ontario, Canada, which helps explain the prices. Meanwhile, the actual review of the game didn't come out until the February 1995 issue of Computer Gaming World, by which point the game had apparently already been out for 4 months. Anyway, I don't know what's going on here. It's confusing, so let me know if you know what happened. Now, the game itself is a DOS game, though it is mouse-based, which is nice. The easiest way to play is to select Quick Start. That gets you into an exhibition game right away. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that the plays are all pretty generic. I mean, how many run-left plays do we need? Now, the ads indicate that there are 3,000 stock plays on the floppy disk version and another 10,000 on the CD, but are they all called things like run left? Well, it turns out that there are different play calling modes. If you're in the most basic mode, it only gives you a vague description of what the play does. To actually see the play, you have to change modes. So after messing around for a while, I was able to put the play calling mode to advanced. Now, if you actually bother to read the manual, you'll figure out what the modes are all about. I hate reading these manuals, and the one for this game is almost 200 pages. I'm not kidding. It's like reading an actual playbook. Anyway, I'll show you what it tells you so you can skip through the boring stuff. Basic play calling mode means that you get these really generic descriptions of the play. I honestly have no idea why in the world you would want this. You don't even know what formation you're in. Anyway, what you want is either standard or advanced play calling mode. From what I can tell, the only difference is that standard gives you a suggested play call. And then there's the so-called arcade features of the game where you can control your own players. I turned that on as well, and it was special. You turn that on by changing the action mode from basic to something else. In basic action mode, the computer controls everything except for the snap. You have to remember to push enter to snap the ball when you're on offense. In advanced mode, you control everything. You need to make sure you have one of these number pads, nothing else seems to work. The manual talks about using one of those old-fashioned joysticks, so best of luck to you if you can get one of those to work. Anyway, standard is probably best since the computer controls everything until you decide to take control. After messing around with it a little bit, I finally decided that the best option was to let the computer control how the players actually moved. The control in this game is delayed at best. Now, this game was created by Sierra Online or Sierra Entertainment, depending on what year you're looking at. They made games like King's Quest, Police Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, and so on. And the controls in this game feel just as stiff as they do in those games. This isn't quite Tecmo Super Bowl. Now, the problem here with play calling is that the plays are scattered about randomly. In other words, you don't choose a formation, you just scroll through and find a play. The running plays are first, then the passing plays, and then finally the goal line plays. Well, that's the default setting. You see, the idea is that you're supposed to put together your own playbook, and that's not an easy thing to do. In fact, this is probably the strangest design I've ever seen for a serious football sim. To show you how to put together a playbook, we have to go back to the beginning screen. You need to go to either exhibition play or league play. You have to choose a home team first, and then you can go to the play editor. Here you can load all sorts of plays. Once you've loaded a play, you can practice it. It's kind of pointless just to practice with the offense. And so you can load up a defensive play as well and play them against each other. Now, I'm controlling the players in the hopes of learning the controls, and the controls are really delayed. You have to push Control to select a receiver to pass the ball to and then enter to pass. Half the time I wind up getting sacked first. The other half of the time there's simply nobody open. Now the real funny thing is that the crowd will boo if you give up a safety. I'm not sure why all these people are watching the team practice. Anyway, I guess it's good practice for real game situations.
First down.
Now the coolest part is that you can run the same play against all sorts of different defenses. But the crazy thing is that there are so many plays, you'll never have time to see them all. The reason why I thought of this game was because of the NCAA 26 advertisement saying that the game has 3,000 plays. I mean, this game has 10,000, right? That should be better, right? Sadly, not really. You see, the plays on the CD aren't organized in any meaningful fashion. You've got passing plays to the left, middle, and right. They're divided up between short, medium, and long, but there's no division according to formation, which really drives me nuts. To be honest with you, this is the one thing that really makes me hesitate to dive in deep when I play this game. It just takes way too much time to set up the playbook, especially since nothing is organized in a way that makes any sense. I want to spend my time thinking about player matchups and strategy, not trying to figure out which one of the passes is actually in the shotgun. Anyway, there are other modes you can check out. The league play mode is interesting, though it took me forever to figure out how to control a team. You'd think you could just click on this computer manager option. Nope, you're supposed to click over here on ownership to change it. And then it asks you for a password, but this is only if you want to set a password. I guess they thought that multiple people would play the same game on the same computer or something. I don't know. I don't understand it. Anyway, you have to be careful with that screen since you can screw things up if you start the season before you choose your team. I had to reinstall the game after making that mistake since there's no way to go back and undo things. It's frustrating. The other frustration I had is with the graphics. I mean, they're not awful, but they do feel underwhelming. There's a cool instant replay mode that lets you look at the same play from any angle. However, it would have been nice to have some more basic features like an all-22 mode instead of having me move the camera around like crazy. The gameplay isn't too bad if you're only calling plays and not controlling the action. I've read that the defense is supposed to be stingy, but that wasn't my experience at all. Actually, I found it really easy to move the ball, especially on 4th and long. It wasn't unrealistic, but it also wasn't impossible. The balance felt just about right. It would have been nice if the controls were, a little bit more responsive. Anyway, I was curious about how this one compared with some of its contemporaries, so I played around a little bit. So for the sake of comparison, here's more Football Pro 95. And now here's Micro League Football Deluxe, which came out 2 years earlier. The graphics aren't great, but that might be because of my emulation settings. The play calling in Micro League seems to be completely broken. I've got no idea what I'm doing. But you can see that Football Pro 95 just looks better. Now here's Tom Landry's Strategy Football Deluxe, which came out in 1993. The play calling here is easier. However, the graphics are not great and the animation is pretty poor. But enough of that, let's check out the console games, which is where all the real football games were, right? College Football National Championship on the Sega Genesis is fascinating since it's got a commentator. The graphics, though, are not all that great. NFL 94 on the Genesis is the exact same game except with pro teams. I found the gameplay kind of awkward, but I haven't really played enough with it to get used to it. NFL 95, which came out at the same time as Football Pro 95, has a fascinating graphics engine. They got rid of the commentary, which is probably a good thing. I really like the perspectives here. It reminds me a lot more of modern games. And here's Madden 95 on the Genesis. The graphics are a little bit more smooth than Football Pro 95. However, I do think the Football Pro looks a little bit better overall. The control on Madden is a little bit easier, but it's far from great. The Super Nintendo version of Madden 95 doesn't look any better. The sound is worse, which is surprising. And I found the gameplay really frustrating and annoying.
Touchdown.
Tecmo Super Bowl III came out for both the Genesis and Super Nintendo in 1995. The Genesis version doesn't really look all that great, but at least the play control is okay. The Super Nintendo version had the great graphics, but the play control isn't all that good. I really hate the play calling screens in those games. In my opinion, they're just as bad as Football Pro. Honestly, there are reasons why so many people prefer Tecmo Super Bowl and the NES. It just feels right, it's smooth, it's fast, and looks great. The original Tecmo Super Bowl on the Sega Genesis is also fantastic. I love the play control in this game. I also think these graphics are far better than anything else that came out in the mid-90s before the 3D era. In terms of graphics, I've got to put Football Pro 95 ahead of most of its contemporaries, but it just doesn't look as good as Tecmo Super Bowl. And in terms of play control, it really isn't even close. Now, I'm bringing up this comparison for a reason. Computer Gaming World ran its 150 Best Games of All Time issue back in November 1996, and I bet you can guess why I'm bringing this up now. Number 1 was Civilization, and number 2 was Ultima 4, believe it or not. Doom was relegated to the number 5 slot, which is like a joke. But the real crazy thing is that Football Pro 95 was listed as the number 11 computer game of all time. Seriously, number 11? Like, I could see you calling this maybe the best football game of 1994 and 1995, sure. But number 11 of all time? Honestly, I don't think that this game is quite as good as XOR NFL Challenge. At least that one has a playbook that makes sense. Now, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, or maybe I would think more highly of this game if I took the time to make my own playbook and to get deep into a season, but I don't know. I mean, it's hard to devote all sorts of time to messing around with screens like this. The practice mode is cool, sure. But the graphics just feel dated and the simulation doesn't add enough to make me want to keep playing. For the purpose of comparison, this is nothing like NFL 2K5, one of the best football games of all time. Now that game might not have the best graphics in the world. However, the smooth play control and the easy interface makes me want to just keep on playing. This is the sort of game I could see myself playing over and over again. Football Pro 95, on the other hand, is a game that I probably wouldn't want to revisit. I just have a hard time thinking 11th best computer game of all time when I play this one. Sure, there are 10,000 plays, and that's kind of impressive. However, most of these plays are just variants of the same thing. You can create your own plays if you want, but you don't have the freedom to create plays in formations like, say, the single wing. It's not a huge disappointment, but honestly, this could have been a lot better. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. I do think it's a good game, and I think it's probably a little bit better than Madden 95. Personally, though, I would much rather play Tecmo Super Bowl, but then again, you already knew that. Anyway, let me know what you think down below in the comments.